So that's a very easy recipe to do. And right now I'm bringing up 10 gallons of water. And I'm going to bring that up to about 155, 160 degrees. And that's to make the sugar and molasses soluble. And once, because wait, that's way too heavy for me. So I'm going to draw off 5-pound sections, or sorry, 5-gallon sections, and then I'm just going to mix it in slowly into the big fermenter, and then do a gradual add. So I'm going to let this go for a while, and we'll get that started once it's ready to go. Right now, don't think we're quite there yet. So the water's been brought up temperature. It's about 10 gallons. That brought up to about 160 degrees. And because this is the rum, what I wanted is a warmer water that's going to allow me to dissolve the sugars and the molasses easy. And I've cleaned out my fermenter. It's all cleaned. I soaped her down, rinsed it out, and had a Sani-Star put into it. Yeah, something like that. Anyways, it's a sanitizer. It's a spray and sanitizer. You leave it and it's fine. You can mix it right in with the mash. Nice and easy to handle. And once again, sorry about the shaking. I'm back on a selfie stick. Yeah, you can see that. And hand's not too steady at this distance. But the other camera, I'm still having issues with the software and the learning curve. So until I get that sorted out, we'll be using this just so I can keep you up to date. This is a very simple mash, and it's called the Butter Rum, and I'm going to include on the next video, I'm probably going to include all the instructions, and it should give you a link where to get the recipe. The nice thing about this rum is it's supposed to offset a bit of a bit of a butter flavor, which I think I would really enjoy, and that's why I wanted to go this route. So we'll go with that, and it's a simple recipe. Essentially 3 ingredients: molasses, sugar, and water. Well, okay, yeast, 4. Here you'll see I've got a bag of 20 kilogram brown sugar. And this was just convenience. So what I've done is I've upped the recipe to give me a 40-gallon batch. And it's really quite simple. It should be 44, but I rounded it to 40 gallons. Essentially, for every 2 pounds of molasses, it's so much water. So because I have a 5 kilogram of molasses here, I'll bring this up. So there's 5 kilograms in this, and I just essentially upscaled the recipe to incorporate this whole container. So it's this whole container, 5 kilograms, the 20 kilograms of sugar, which is 44 pounds roughly, and I'm going to do 40 gallons of water. So 10 of it I'm going to be heating up, and it's already at 160, so I'm ready to do that. And I'm going to throw that in first, and then I'm going to add the molasses, and I'm going to mix that in really well. And then I'm going to add in the brown sugar. Now, once I empty this molasses into it, and it's not a very wide mouth, so it's going to be a bit of a difficulty. Once I've emptied this in, and I start to do the brown sugar, and I mix it all in, I'm actually going to throw this into the microwave. Now, the nice thing about molasses is it's very, well, the nasty thing is it's very thick, tar-like substance when it's cold. But when it's warm, or even hot, it flows very fast. So by throwing this in the microwave, I'll reduce it enough. All the thick stuff that's stuck to the walls and everything else gets reduced, and it'll flow right out. And then I can just add a bit of hot water to that after that, and I should be able to rinse it out and get almost everything that's in this bottle. So I'll get on that. We'll get the water in here first, start adding this stuff, and after that, then we'll add the cold. And I'm adding enough cold that I should be able to bring temperature right down to where I want to ferment. And what I'll do is, before I add the last 5 gallons, I'll just make sure I double check that temperature. We are going to ferment between 85 to 90 degrees. So I don't want to go below 85 before I pitch my yeast. And I have picked a special yeast for this. The yeast I've picked does impart a little bit of a banana flavor and some fruits and that sort of thing, and butter. So it also aids in making this flavor. And there is a trick on this one, supposedly, when you go to distill it. So I'll show you that when we get to that stage. Well, that's a week away. Well, maybe not. I mean, this should typically, I've been hearing it ferments out in 2 or 3 days, but we will give it a week to ferment. And so we'll get on that, get the hot water in, get it all mixed up, get the cold water in, check the pH, and then pitch our yeast. Okay, so that takes care of the water. So next up, run some molasses. And growing up in Cape Breton, this was a staple food for us. We lived pretty heavily on molasses, and of course, as you may have heard me in the past, when I was young, this was the first moonshine I ever made, was molasses shine. Now, before I go too much further, I'm going to start mixing this as well. I'm not going to mix it with that drum. Where is the other drum? Oh, that already smells wonderful. And evidently my other fermenter is having a fit. Could be you from the heat from this. It's having fun. All right, so I'm gonna throw this in the microwave. I'll come back and we'll start into this bag down here. So I've thrown in, now once again, this is fancy molasses, and brand name doesn't matter. But this is a fancy molasses, a little more refined and a little higher sugar. And once again, if you know molasses well, then this is what we'll put on bread or on oatmeal, even on pancakes. So blackstrap it's for cooking and for animal feed. it's a lot darker, bitter, not that great. So I've added a little bit of water in here, but you can see I didn't add that much water. That's all molasses I heated up. And that container is spotless already. So molasses is not that hard to work with. The colder it is, the thicker it is. And it sure doesn't like to come out of there. But once it's warm, it's like maple syrup. It just pours right out. Stir that up really well. So all the molasses in. We'll recycle this. Can I use it for anything else? No, I don't think so. I have another one of these. I originally thought I was going to do up a whole 80-gallon batch, but decided to wait and split it into just 240s because there's something I think I might want to try for the second batch. So I'm going to try this first, and so now I'm going to run the sugar. I'm just going to cut a little hole in here. Well, size is somewhat relative. So there's the sugar cut open. Now this is where I'm going to require a second hand. So give me a sec and I'll be right back. All right, so now we're going to get this in here. And a bit of a trick. So get a good hold of this. I do want to mix while I'm doing this. So I've got a very strong whisk on here, and it's mixing in pretty good. And although it's still quite warm, it is all saturated in, and I am aerating at some degree, but not really a whole lot because of the heat. The aeration will deplete out of this pretty quick. Well, that's pretty good. So we have 10 gallons of water in here already, and it is a 40-gallon mix. So I'm going to add another 30 gallons to this, and I'm going to watch my temperature, especially when I get near that last 10 gallons. I got to check my temperature. Remember, we're going to ferment between 85 and 90 degrees, so there's no sense dropping this below that. So I'm going to keep as close to that as I can. Once I get to get the last of the water into here and get my full 40 gallons, then I have to check the temperature, make sure it's good, take a pH reading, and I'm also going to take a specific gravity reading. And depending on where that is, because I don't want to stress my yeast out too much, depending on where that is, I may have to add a bit more water. If it's a little low, I'm okay, because there's lots in here. And if it's a little low, that's fine. So I'm aiming around 1.07 would be ideal for me. I'd be happy there. If it's a little bit higher, it'll stress the yeast a bit. That's not the end of the world, and it's not the worst thing. But we'll see where we get with it. Let me just get the rest of the, you'll join me as soon as I get the rest of the water in here. All right, so now we have 35 gallons in here. And this we're gonna stop and start doing some checking. Because up to this point, I knew I was pretty safe. But now I need to know a few things. So first up, temperature. Okay, so my temperature through my laser reader is 74.4. So I'm going to add more hot water to this. I want to bring this up at least another 10 degrees, at least close. But I know I'm at, in Celsius, is 23.6. Close enough for me to take a specific gravity reading too. So that's next. Because that's going to tell me whether or not I can go the full 40 gallons. And I do have something here. We'll throw this in. There's a bit of a cloud in here, but it's not too bad. And that doesn't look too bad. But I also have a refractometer. And this is, to me, it's just a little easier to use. Do you need something like this? No, you don't. That one will do just fine. But I do kind of like this, so I'm going to take that. I only need 1 or 2 drops, actually 2 or 3 drops. 2 looks good. I squish that, and I'm just going to look through it at the light, and it tells me that I'm at 1.060. So it's a little bit low. I'm going to need to add just some more sugar to this. Because I want that at 1.068 or 70. So in my calculations, I was theoretically incorrect. I should have had a specific gravity higher than this with an extra 5 gallons of water in there. But not an issue. We'll just up the sugar, bring this up a little bit higher, and then that's good, because boy, that is an awful lot. You know, when you have a 15 gallon still and you're looking in here at 35 gallons, that's a few runs. So I'm not even going to read this. It's got cloud all over it. So it's a good thing that I stopped where I did and did my checks. It allows me to play with it a little bit more, get up a little closer. I'm not too worried about getting the water in here. And at 74 degrees, I'm close enough that I'm going to be able to bring that temperature up, and my yeast to be fine. So, although I thought a 44 pound or 20 kilogram bag of brown sugar would be enough, and I gauged my recipe upon that size, it wasn't. But never really knowing the future, I always make sure I have a couple extra. So I have a couple more bags here. I'm going to mix these in. Actually, I've got 3 of them. I'm going to mix 2 of them in and see where my specific gravity sits at that point. If I need the 3rd, I'll add it. Hopefully I won't. And this, there's different colors of there's light brown, golden, dark of your brown sugar. So make sure that your little bags, if you're going to have this in backup, is the same as what your big bag was. And that's only for consistency. And that is one thing that's important to me, is I need to be able to replicate these every time. So consistency and how things go together, making it easy, is all very important to me. So I'll give this a stir up. And I'll put a new battery in already. When you're doing these and you're using a battery drill, make sure you keep some charged ones. Also, a paddle that's not quite so heavy would be good too. But I like this one. So what I'm trying to do at this point is I'm creating a vortex in the center, and that's pulling air in. And at this point in time, this temperature, this is trying to aerate the mixture. I ran that in reverse just to stop the cyclone that was going on in there. And that drill's starting to get sticky. I haven't gone through a drill yet, so we'll see. Alright, so I'm just going to let some of these bubbles that are on top here, and then I'm going to take another test, see what my specific gravity is. Typically when we, after you do this, before you pitch your yeast, you want to run, you want to get air into here, and the yeast need the air at the beginning. So I will typically run this and create a vortex which will suck air down to the bottom and let it just aerate up through the mix. And I'll do that for about 2 minutes at minimum, and make sure I get a really good in here. It's probably already done. I mean, some people just do it for 20-30 seconds, but at the very beginning, it's great to get a lot of air into this mix. So now, time to do another specific gravity check. So you just put a couple drops on that window, and you push down on the lid, look up into here. Okay, and I'm at just above 1.060 now. So I'm going to add a bit more. And let's see if you can see this. There you go. Okay, numbers are backwards. Sorry about that. But there's what it looks like inside these. Okay, and you can see that line. That's what looks inside them. You can see the line. You can see how much nicer this is to play with. I really do like these. They also have one of these for alcohol measurement. And I don't have one of those yet, but it only goes up to 80%. I'm still thinking that'd be worthwhile to have. Because then I don't have to fill up when I'm doing my cuts, and I want to know exactly what the volume is. The parrot's telling me as I'm doing my distilling, the parrot is telling me what the jar is, roughly what I start the jar at and what I finish the jar at. But when I go to do my cuts, I'll have that marked, and anything below 80%, I can check with this. And I only need to do a couple of drops in that. Not with this one specifically. This is for specific gravity reading. But there is another refractometer out there that does alcohol. But once again, it only goes from 0 to 80%. So I'm going to pick up another one of these just because I like them so much. And when I go do the small blending, then I just use a couple of drops instead of having to fill a cylinder, graduated cylinder, and then dropping a hydrometer in, which is a fair volume, and you can get a bit of a change there, whereas only 2 drops gives you a pretty accurate reading on the alcohol one. So this you can see where it's at. I'm going to add the other bag of brown sugar and then mix it up again. So I've mixed this up well, and we're sitting at 1.068, somewhere around there. But I want to be sure I got the bottom in. The rig I have right now is not quite good enough. Now, I ran a full 2 minutes and I've aerated this. I just want to be sure I got the bottom, and I don't have a paddle. I don't have anything that long. No, I'm not sticking my arm in there. That'd be sticky. Hold on a sec. I do have something. Because I wasn't using this one, I was using the shorter ones. And that's over at the distillery. But I did have this one. And I cleaned it up. Well, it was already cleaned. That's why it came home, one of the reasons. But I just gave it another spritz of the sanitizer, and this will reach the bottom. Just barely. Okay, so I don't feel anything in the bottom, which is good. It tells me everything is saturated in the solution. I'll just do my final check on my specific gravity, check my pH, and then pitch my yeast. And you'll see what yeast I'm using. Hold on a sec. Gotta go clean this again. All right, so this really smells amazing. I just love the smell, and as long as this turns out, this is gonna be run a few times. So I've just calibrated my pH meter, and I've already done my specific gravity. I'm at 1.068. Now I'm gonna check my pH. I know what my temperature is, so I'll turn that on, and you see the last calibration was 4.1. Put that in here. And this does take a few seconds. Okay, so my reading says I'm at 6.4. A little bit high. I want to be a little bit lower than that. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably add a little bit of gypsum to it, just to bring the pH down a touch. And if I stay around 5.8, 5.6, I think I'm going to be good in that area. So I don't need a whole lot, just a little bit. And once again, remember, CO2 also lowers pH. So if I'm a little bit high, And this is going to be, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a roaring boil for the CO2. That's why I've got my my tube for the ferment for the off gas. I think this is going to be a roaring boil as far as that goes, so that it's going to drop the pH on its own just by the CO2 in the solution. So I'm just going to drop this a little bit, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got my bag of gypsum here, and I'm not going to show you exactly how much I'm putting in, because really I just do it by, I put a little bit in, mix it up, check it, and then move on if I need to move any more in. So I'm going to put a little bit in here. Maybe just a bit more than that. And this stuff goes a long way. So ideally, I should be waiting about half an hour before I check this again. But I'll get a rough idea pretty quick. I'm pretty sure it's going to be enough. My drill sticky. Ugh. And I have no problem adding a little extra oxygen in here. No problem at all. When I'm doing this, I try to keep the drill near the middle. So it's right about here. It's on an angle going in. But what I'm looking for is I'm looking to actually be able to see a bit of the head. Because then I know it's pulling oxygen in and forcing it down. And that's the second battery for tonight. But I'm pretty sure I'm done with it. Yeah, I definitely gotta wash this one off. Oh yeah, but I'm gonna party it. Hey, my old grain mash is really bubbling away nicely still. I had to up the pH on that one, so pH is quite important, and a little more so than I thought it would be at first. So I'm just going to quickly check this, see how much of a job difference this did. Okay, so this is down to 5.9, and I'm going to leave it there, and I'll pitch my yeast at that, because that's pretty decent. I think it's going to drop more once the CO2 gets to it, and I think we're ready to get the yeast wet. So I'm going to do a starter on the yeast. I'm going to use a little bit of this wash, a little bit of the mash, and some warm water, temperate water, and just mix up my yeast. And I'll show you what brand I'm using shortly.